Mike, I have never seen you present to a group where people weren't spellbound. So I'm going to be watching to see how spellbound they are today. That's just going to be kind of fun.
Well, thank you for lowering everyone's expectations.
But Mike, that's just the deal. There's no way I can oversell this. This guy is absolutely incredible, and he's incredible because he is passionate about the work, and he knows the work because he's done it. You are a principal.
Yes.
Not only were you a principal, you were a great principal. Where does North Carolina folks, CMS? Do you know he lives in your state? He's a North Carolina boy, and you're going to like what he has to say. Debbie Daniels, where are you? We all owe Debbie Daniels a round of applause because she found Mike Rutherford and brought him to the SAM project 6 years ago. Mike Rutherford.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Debbie. Yes, I was homeless on the side of the road, and Debbie found me and said, we have this thing called Sam. I said, I don't care what he's called. I'll go. Let's do it. If you don't mind, join me in some appreciation for our conference director, Mark Schellinger. Mark, we appreciate it. I don't know about you, but the level of service and the location and the food and all the details, that makes for a good time and good learning. So thank you for that as well. I bring you greetings from my home. I do live just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, in a little town called Waxhaw. You can see Charlotte from there on a clear day, right? And bring you greetings from my family. I'm proud to say we have 4 kids. 2 of them are going to be teachers. One of them is already a second grade teacher in South Carolina. I have another one in college. So I have two children that said they want to be teachers, and 2 children that said, when I graduate from high school, I don't want to go back to any other school ever. That's what they've said. I said, well, that's not an option. You're going to have to go to college. But after that, if you want to go into another career, you can. My career started as a high school chemistry teacher. I've been a high school assistant principal. I've been a middle school and a high school principal. I've been a director of a professional development academy. And for the last 14 years, I've been the leader of our company, Rutherford Learning Group. We are a research and development consultancy. And basically what we do is we observe excellent teachers and take copious notes and write down what we see. There are about a dozen people or so that work with me fanning out across the country, and several other English-speaking countries as well that have education systems similar to ours. And we knock on the principal's door and we simply say, steer us in the direction of 2 or 3 or 4 of your most outstanding teachers, your most creative, innovative. If they're experienced, that's okay, but that's not necessary. They could be brand new. They could have 30 years of experience. Let us watch. We promise we won't interrupt. We just want to watch everything about how excellent teachers, how they move, what they do, what do they decide, how do they introduce a new lesson, how do they review a previous lesson, how do they decide who sits where, how do they decide when to go fast and when to go slow, what kind of bottled water do they drink. We'll pretty much write down anything about great teachers. 4 times a year we bring the crew back to the Charlotte area and we get in a room and put flip chart paper on the walls and look for themes. It's called an affinity sort. So what are you seeing? What are you seeing? And we've taken that information and tried to develop it into professional development resources and ideas that can help teachers learn from the great practice that they're exhibiting already. You have some materials on your table. One of the things that you have is a blue laminated card. So there should be one for everyone. Make sure that you have one of these. So find your Developing the Artisan Teacher memory jogger and hold it in your hand. And let's just agree that it would be fun to do this. So I know you want to do it. Just get it out of your system. There you go. So if you were to say, gosh, Mike, I just got an important text. I can't stay for the rest of the presentation. Can you give it to me in 30 seconds? I'd say, okay, here's my best shot. On the front and the back of this card is the answer to this question. Based on 35,000 classroom observations of very successful teachers, what are the most recurring themes? They're written here. The things that are on this card are not going to be new to you. The names of them might be new to some of you, but this is the answer to the question. If you had the opportunity, if someone came to you and said, the SAMS National Innovation Project has just received a grant, and we're wondering if you might mind leaving your job for a couple of years and just traveling the country and watching great teachers teach and take notes and then talk to other people doing the same thing and see if you can find out any themes. Anyone here be interested in that job if it was available? That'd be fun. That whole table raised your hand. Makes you think, yes. It would be. And it would be an educational experience for you as well as for the teachers that you observe. So in our follow-up session to this, that'll be in here after this session, we'll go into, if you choose to attend, what these 23 themes are, where they come from. And we'll talk a little bit more deeply about 2 or 3 of those. Now, when we're not doing the teacher research part, we turn our attention to administrators, and we shadow them. So we go to the superintendent and knock on the door and say, steer us in the direction of 2 or 3 or 4 of your most outstanding principals, assistant superintendents. We'd like to observe them. Now, you can't observe an administrator because they move around. It's called shadow, right? Which means we just follow you around and try not to get in your way, but take copious notes on what you do and what you don't do and who you talk to and how long you talk to them and what you say and how much time you spend. If I had known that the SAM project was so awesome, I could have not done a lot of this research, just simply talked to your time change coach, and I would know exactly what you do every moment of the day, right? So it's one of the reasons that I think we have such a good philosophical fit with the SAMS project. On your table, you have another sheet of paper called Skillful Observation and Coaching Laboratory Notes. And it simply says, it's a front back handout. It says, welcome to the Skillful Observation and Coaching Laboratory. Thank you for participating. One of the professional development experiences that we use to communicate to administrators these findings of excellent teachers and how to give them feedback and how to provide coaching to them is this thing called SOCL, Skillful Observation and Coaching Laboratory. There are a number of educators in the room today who have been through some of the SOCL sessions. Raise your hand if you are a graduate of any Skillful Observation and Coaching Laboratory element. Okay, so a few. So the rest of you are saying, if I haven't attended this, I can still lead a normal life. And you're right. It's not that crucial. But the idea is that as we work with school administrators on how to coach and how to develop and how to give feedback to teachers according to these 23 themes. If you look at the back page, there's something there called a logic model. And that's where I'd like to begin today. Let's talk a little bit about the logic behind doing what you're doing with your SAM. The logic behind spending more time in instructional leadership. As if you were to ask, okay, Mike, the 23 themes are for teachers. Tell me, what is it that you see as you talk to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of administrators? Now that number's up to about 600. 600 very successful school administrators, shadowed, interviewed, detailed, mapped out. What's in common for them? What's in common is this logic model. We have a question that we want to ask you as we observe and shadow you. We all know that you want to be an instructional leader. Tell me, how do you think about that? How do you think about that role of your work? And so what you see on the back of that page is a 6-part logic model that basically describes this is how the most successful school administrators think about their role as an instructional leader. Let's just go through quickly the logic model. Now, if you have a pen or a pencil, I'm going to invite you to take notes. There's some places on the back of this page you can write a few things. Taking notes sharpens up thinking. So it's optional, but it's highly recommended. Let's start with the bottom part of the logic model, which is called a busy life. You know, a logic model, it's just a fancy name. It's a way of thinking, right? It's how do you go about this part of your job. Whenever I go to a conference like this, I have a logic model for how to approach dinner. Like last night when we were out at the ranch having dinner, you know, here's my logic model. Before you grab a plate and get in line, circle the whole operation once and see what's on the other end of the line, right? That way, you won't load your plate up with things that you didn't know there was the other opportunity at the end of the line. That's my logic model. If someone was doing a research study and said, tell me, what's your way of thinking about how to eat dinner at a conference? That's what I would say. That's my logic model. I have a logic model for driving on the interstate. Here's my logic model. Go 2 miles per hour slower than the fastest people out there. Don't worry about the speed limit. Just worry about not being the fastest person on the road. Now I have to admit that not all logic models will keep you out of trouble, and I've had some trouble with that one. But still, until I find a better logic model, That's the one I'm using. I figure if a bunch of cars speed past a state trooper, surely he'll catch the worst offender, even if it's just a couple of miles per hour slower. So a logic model isn't a deep psychological thing. It's just kind of the way that we think about things. Let's take a look. Number one, life as a school administrator is incredibly busy. I don't know if people who have never been a school administrator can ever truly appreciate just what the life is. It is never a dull moment. I like the way that Kent Peterson at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, with a research study with lots of graduate students that went out and observed school administrators, said that there are three things that typify a school administrator's life. And here they are: brevity, fragmentation, diversity. Brevity. When school administrators are at work, they have many interactions with other human beings, but they're almost all brief. They're very short. The research study, a Peterson study, said that the average length of an interaction of a school principal with another human being is 18.5 seconds. So you're thinking, well, no wonder I'm having trouble building deep, meaningful relationships with people at work. I'm interacting with them 18.5 seconds at a time. But then, be honest, aren't there a couple of people at your job where you're thinking, yeah, but if you know her or him, 18.5 seconds is a long time, right? I mean, I'm looking at my watch going, man, it's only 10 seconds in and it already feels like 2 weeks. We see a lot of people in a brief period of time. Number two is called fragmentation. You know, if you have a real high need in your life to finish things that you start, you may want to look elsewhere for a career, right? Because being a school administrator is not a job where you get to finish what you start. It's a job where you get to start a lot of things and then get interrupted, and then go back to them later and then fix them and push them a little further down the road. And maybe you'll never get to finish any of them, but you're always what? Juggling. It's a life of fragmentation. And no matter how we try to take that fragmentation out, that's part and parcel of the job. You just sort of have to be good at it, don't you? You have to say, hey, how's it going? Oh, great. I'm usually juggling 12 tasks. I'm down to 8 right now. I think I'll have a cup of coffee. Right? That's kind of the life. And here's the secret that we won't tell anyone if you've ever been a school administrator. Because we like to sort of whine about it a little. Like, how's it going? Oh, man, you just don't know. Well, are you able to take a breath? Barely take a breath. I mean, I'm just barely above water. I mean, you know how it is. But here's the truth. If we told the truth, tell me this is not, we like it that way. We like this life. Thank you very much for not putting me in a cubicle. I am a school administrator, which means every new 5 minutes could be a new adventure, right? We like that part of it. So it's the fragmentation. It's a novelty seeking. By the way, we don't have time to talk about it, but that trait, novelty seeking, is also very, very apparent in other personality types that aren't so positive, right? Self-destructive behaviors, drug addicts, people who speed in on the highway, people who have too many relationships. I won't go into it, but it all kind of is a syndrome, and it starts with being a school administrator. Number three, diversity. In perhaps no other job are we asked to be effective with so many different types of people in a rapid fire moment, right? So if you're a school administrator, you've got to know how to talk to a third grader. And then the next second, the teacher of the third grader, then the parent of the third grader, then the grandparent of the third grader, then the attorney of the third grader's mother, then the school board attorney, then someone who wants to help you sell chocolate at your school for money, and so what happens is, because they go so quickly, has this ever happened to you? Have you caught yourself using the wrong code with the wrong person? It's called code shifting, right? It's sort of like when you go home and start talking to your spouse as if they work for you. That doesn't work, right? My wife would always tell me that, hey, hold on, dude. I'm the superintendent in this household. You need to. But when you have to work with so many different people in such a rapid-fire manner, it's forgivable to sometimes think, wait a minute, I'm not talking to a third grader anymore. I need to change my language, change what happens. So it's brevity, fragmentation, diversity. Here's one thing we know. The most effective school administrators in the world don't try to change this. They go with it. And looking at that, do you see why we need a SAM? Do you see why a SAM-principal combination could be such a powerful thing? Because of the life of school administrators? Let's go up one notch on the logic model. The second thing that great school administrators say The first one is they acknowledge the life. They say, this is the life, and quite honestly, I know what it's like, I embrace it, I even like it. Here's what it's like. The second thing they say is, since life is what it is, I have to be careful about where I spend my time. My time is never enough to do everything that I have to do. Being a school administrator, even with a great SAM, is to have a never-ending to-do list. Every time you make a to-do list, which is a pretty cruel psychological thing to do if you're a school administrator, to actually write down all the things you have to do today, because that's going to be a depressing list, because here's what you'll find out. You start off bright and early in the morning with about 15 things on your to-do list. You'll check in at about 10 a.m. and you have accomplished 3 and added 9. Right? And so by the end of the day, your to-do list is longer than at the beginning of the day. And you know what? If we were really smart, we would figure out we'd be ahead if we would stay home. And here's why. School administrators attract problems. You are problem machines. You think, no, I'm a problem solver. Yes, you are. You're also a problem creator. When you walk down a hallway, problems ooze out of the lockers, right? They meet you at someone sees you coming and they say, oh, there you are. Have you got a minute? This is a problem in the making, right? And the problem would never have existed if you had turned right at the hallway instead of turned left at the hallway. Have you ever done that in school? Have you ever just said to yourself, why did I come down here? I should have turned left, because turning right, I think I just lost 2 weeks of my life by just simply turning right down this hallway, right? So the idea is that leverage, it means mechanical advantage. Now in educational research, we call it effect size. So here's the deal. The most effective school administrators, as we shadow you and watch you, you have an uncanny eye for high effect size uses of your time. You size them up in a nanosecond. You're walking down the hallway and 2 or 3 things come in. You can kind of spot, this is a distraction. This gives me a little bit of results. That is where I should spend my time. Wouldn't it be great if every request for your time and attention during the day came with its effect size labeled clearly on the outside? Right? So every phone call, every email, every meeting, every chance encounter, the person had a sign. And then maybe it was between 0 and 10, right? And it just told you the effect size. So you could say, today I'm working on 7s and above. I'm not sorry if I talk to you, but you're a 6. Come over here, you're an 8, right? Here's the deal. You have that in your mind. One of the gifts of being a skilled administrator is to quickly size up effect size. This is going to be more effective than that use of my time. Here's my personal definition of a good day for a school administrator. It's at the end of the day, you look at the list of what you did and you compare it to the list of what you didn't get to. And as long as the list of what you did have higher effect sizes than the list of the things you didn't do, you had a good day. Because you'll never do it all, even if you have the world's most amazing SAM. You still have to choose. Logic model part number 2. Life is busy. That's number 1. Number 2, therefore I have to identify high leverage, high effect size activities and spend my time doing those things. Effect size number 3. In all the research that we've been able to assemble on the question, well then what would be a good thing for school administrators to spend their time on? We've never found anything with a higher effect size than what's on the screen right now. The quality of instruction in classrooms. The quality of teaching. Notice that on that screen it does not say teacher quality. What does it say? It's ing. It's not that there isn't a good amount of research on teacher quality. I just like to call our attention to it's teaching quality that we're after. And that's what instructional leadership can boost. The quality of instruction. I'm talking about technique. I'm talking about skills. I'm really talking about individual teacher moves. I like that word. I think it describes what great teachers do. It's an athletic word, right? If you go to a basketball game, you'd say, wow, what a good move. A point guard did a crossover dribble and lost the guy who was guarding him and dished off to the side and made an assist. You say, wow, that's an athletic move. Here's the definition of a move in sports. It is a burst of technique that puts you at an advantage to your competition. Whether you play football, whether you play basketball, whether it's hockey, a good move is a burst of technique that puts you at an advantage to the game. And I'd suggest that's a great way of watching teachers too. Teachers have moves. Teachers make thousands of moves every day, and to be keen observers of those moves, here's, I think, a good way of looking at that. I'm looking for short bursts of teaching technique that put the teacher at an advantage, that put the students at an advantage. So teaching quality, or moves, is the number one highest effect size variable. As you're looking at your to-do list of what did I get done today and what did I leave undone, if you have on the side of what I did a good amount of classroom observation and learning to appreciate and give feedback and coach and develop teachers' skills and technique and moves, you are operating on the highest effect size variable that we've ever uncovered in the research about what makes schools high performing. So, mechanical advantage. Step 1, life is busy. Step 2, I better do what's important, not just what's in front of me. Step 3, anything I do that increases teaching quality is going to fall into that category. Number 4, here's where it gets a little tricky. I'd like to suggest today that the highest effect size subset of everything we do with teachers is this: when we work with teachers around their talents and their strengths. When we engage them and encourage them and give them feedback and coach them and understand how they do what they do best. I'm not for a moment suggesting that as administrators we don't have the responsibility to give teachers tips and suggestions and correctives and to motivate them and to get them to do some things differently. I'm just saying, since the life of an administrator is a never-ending chase of effect size, that working on talents is a higher effect size than working on weaknesses. Can't ignore weaknesses, but if we ignore talents, we do so at the peril to our to-do list. So this is, I didn't put this in here just out of the air. This is how you as school administrators tell me when we debrief you after shadowing, what's your logic model? How do you do what you do? How are you getting the results that you get? Here's what you say: life is busy. Therefore, I do the things that are important. Teaching quality is the most important thing I've ever found. And I have found that it is a better use of every minute of my time to focus as much of it as I can on building out teachers' talents and strengths and spotting them than on only giving feedback and coaching based on correctives and needs assessments and things that teachers are weak in doing. Note, we don't ignore weaknesses. We just don't focus on them obsessively. Why? Because we're nice? No, because we're effective. And we want to make the best use of every minute of our time as school administrators. Coaching, we'll come back to talent in just a moment. Next part of the coaching model, or logic model. Therefore, coaching and feedback becomes pretty important. Because if you want to develop teaching skills, to develop a skill, skills are developed not through going to graduate school necessarily, not through sending someone to staff development, although that helps in the knowledge base. Skills and technique and moves, well, you know how they're developed. How do you improve your skill on the piano? How do you develop your technique on the guitar? How do you develop your skills in a foreign language? You do something called, it starts with a P, practice, and what optimizes practice is feedback and coaching. So there's practice, which makes you better. There's practice with feedback, which makes you better faster. Now, my belief is that coaching and feedback and what we do with teachers as instructional leaders never produces in a teacher anything that wasn't already there. But I do think it produces it faster, deeper, better, and stronger. And that's why coaching and feedback is so important. Gosh, you have so many things on your to-do list, but I'm just going to make this statement. Nothing has a higher effect size than giving a teacher on your faculty growth-evoking feedback based on one of his or her talents and strengths. You are optimizing your life at that moment to the max, to the best that we know. So coaching and feedback, pattern recognition, retrieval fluency, coaching and feedback skills. The card that you have that has the 23 themes, this is just a way of supporting our recognizing effective teaching patterns and having a common language about it. So when we sit down and talk to a teacher about a strength, we can maybe look at this card and say, you know, I was in your classroom today and you gave so many helpful mental models to your students. I'd like to share with you a little bit about how you did that. And wouldn't it be great if the teacher, when you said the phrase mental models, knew what you were talking about? It would accelerate your conversation. So these are 23 talents that you're looking at on this card. These are also 23 themes. They're 23 patterns of excellent teaching. Last part of the logic model, culture. So as the interview is closing, and as you as a very effective school administrator are thinking about what else? What's the last thing I could tell Mike about how I approach my job? Here's what you almost always say. You say, and in the end, if I do this, it improves the professional culture of my school so dramatically and to such a degree that for the future, I attract more talented teachers to my place. And I repel non-talented teachers from even wanting to apply. Let me say that one more time. It's the last part of the logic model. And here's what pays off the most. Giving teachers coaching and feedback based on their talents builds a culture that attracts more talent over time. I think, and I'm kind of a cynical person sometimes, I think there's a great website out there that we don't know about for ineffective teachers. It's called wheredoyounotwannago.com, right? And you want your name to be on that list. Because when there are certain schools where teachers talk and they go, yeah, that's a high-performing school, and I've heard that's a pretty good place, but I'm not putting my transfer in for there. Really, why not? I've heard that the principal at that school has a SAM, and the SAM takes care of a lot of stuff, and so the principal's always out in classrooms. They come into your room a lot, and then they actually look at what you're doing. And here's the thing. I've heard they sort of know what they're looking for. That's a little scary to me. I don't know about you, you know. I think I'll just go down to this other school where they let me put black construction paper on the window of my door, shut the door. They check with me at the beginning of school and at the Christmas party and at the end of the year. And I think I can kind of hide there until I retire in 18 years, right? I know I'm being a little negative, but we don't know as administrators what a blessing it is when a less than talented teacher decides, I'm not even going to go for the interview at that school. I've heard they're kind of intense there. I've heard they really... Now, what type of a teacher would that culture attract? A teacher that has talent. A teacher that wants to develop that talent. All right, let's go back and pick up on talent one more time. I have a quick quiz I want to give you. So it's 3 questions, and I'm going to test your understanding of what's on the screen. The approach of capitalizing on teachers' talents and helping them manage around their non-talents. I've said this is a really highly optimized way of working with teachers. So let me test and see. I'm just going to give you 3 statements that I want you to agree or disagree with, and it sort of gets us to look at this concept of working on talent. So here's number 1. Who am I to disagree with Thomas Edison? But I'm going to a little bit, because these are just very common ways of thinking about human development and talent. And I'm going to suggest that this can't be entirely true. Success is not 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If inspiration is what you get from using your talents, then I'm going to say it's at least a good mix, right? You can't just perspire your way to greatness. You have to be talented at what you're doing and then perspire. Perspiring on something you're no good at, like last night in the dancing, I'm just going to say, some of you need to not perspire much in that direction, right? All the practice in the world is not going to help. You simply don't have a lot of God-given talent for that, so, let other people do it, right? It's not 1%, 99. Maybe it's 50-50. Maybe it's even 80-20 based on talent. Now, I have 4 children, and I have had to revise my dad's speech to them, right? You know the dad speech. The world is your oyster. No matter what you choose to do in your life, if you give enough effort, Thomas Edison, if you perspire, if you hang with it, if you never give up, you can do anything you choose to do. Now get out there, kid, and don't quit and give it your best. I have had to sit every one of them down and say, I apologize. I was giving you the best dad speech I had at the time. I reserve the right to get smarter as a parent. So take notes. Here's dad speech 2.0. Find your talents and find your strength and find what inspires you, and then get out there and never quit on that, right? And when you're thinking about where to go to college, go to a college that you can learn about that. When you're choosing your friends to the degree that you can do that, choose friends that value that. If you ever get married, marry someone who thinks those talents and strengths you have are cool and desirable and won't try to change them into something else. Now that's pretty valuable too. That's the next breakout session after 5 o'clock. Using educational research to improve your marriage. I need to go to that one, not be led by it. So, agree or disagree. Let me give you one more. 2 more. I'm going to say no. You have to have talent if you're going to practice and get to Carnegie Hall. I can't sing a lick. Practicing isn't going to help. The only way I'm going to Carnegie Hall is to buy a ticket. And some of you are with me, right? That's the only way. So practice, practice, practice. All I'm saying is it's sort of this Western tradition. It's this American pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You know, if you're willing to try hard enough, you can do anything. I think that is true. But with respect to teachers, because our time is so scarce, let's work with them and have them practice things that they're good at doing. So, last but not least, this is really going to feel weird after we just sang God Bless America. But I disagree with Winston Churchill. If you are in an endeavor for which you have absolutely no natural strengths or gifts or talent, give up now, right? Or sooner. You're hurting yourself and your friends, right? So in the teacher perspective, if you're singing to your students and playing the guitar and you're no good at it, stop. Just stop. If you're telling jokes and you think you're really funny but no one's laughing, give up now. Now, he was, of course, resisting Nazi Germany in World War II, so we're glad he didn't give up. But it's this notion, and I have to tell you this, based on thousands of observations, one of the things I see teachers do that's a clue to talent, a keen clue to talent, is they give up quickly. When things don't work, they stop. They stop and they do something else. They don't say, why are you doing that again? Because I planned it, because I've written it in the lesson plan. Great teachers have lesson plans, but they don't believe them. They make their decisions based on what they see right in front of them, and they're quick to give up on something that isn't working and choose something else. I think it's just one of the marks of great instruction. Take your somewhere. Maybe you'll have to have another sheet of paper, something. Find a place to jot down some things on talent. Let's go back and talk to them, and I'd like to engage you a little bit in just a little deeper conversation on talent. Let's call this a primer on talent. So there are 4 things about talent that I'd like to share with you. Neural nature, traces, types, and themes. If this is true, that the most effective way to interact with a teacher is to discover their talents and strengths and give them feedback and coaching in those areas, then talent is an often used word. Let's understand it a little bit better. So here are some things about talent. First of all, talent has a neural nature. It is a part of the way our brain develops. From birth through age 22, the human brain goes through a process called neural pruning. Neural pruning is when your infant brain, which is almost infinitely connected, neuron to neuron, goes through a snip-snip process. When you get to be a young adult, usually around age 22, girls get there a little bit ahead of boys. Some people are ahead, some people are behind. But when we get to young adulthood, our brain has gone through a 22-year process of snipping back connections. Your brain gets less and less and less connected as you mature through adolescence. And in the process, you get smarter and smarter and smarter. It is these well-pruned neural pathways that allow you to do things well. A neuroscientist would say a talent is simply an unpruned neural pathway in your mind. It's a few 100,000 neurons linked together that help you do something really quickly, deeply, and strongly, right? Whether it's art or music or sports, whatever your talents might be, your brain did not snip those away. Now, in order to focus your brain's attention on your talents, it had to snip away other things. These became your non-talents, right? So we have talents, which are our neural networks, and we have non-talents, which our brain snipped away our ability to do it. Didn't snip away our ability to do it at all, but snipped away our ability to do it well. You can still do it. It just means you have to use some back roads of your brain to figure it out. You won't be as fast at it or as good at it as other people are. Turn to the people at your table, whether it's one person or 5, and each person take a moment, and I'm really interested in your top-of-the-head response. Don't agonize over it. Don't analyze it. Just answer this question. Birth to age 22, what are some of the things that got snipped in your brain that you're not very good at, you're not very naturally talented in? Just look at some people and give me some ideas. What are some things that didn't work? 1 minute. Go. Check. Thank you very much. Let me ask you to pause right there. Let's run this through a couple of rounds of analysis. So I need someone at your table that would share their non-talent. Nominate someone who had an interesting non-talent at your table. Point to them and I'll bring the microphone over there. Anyone have someone that had an interesting non-talent that you'd like to suggest? Sir, you had one that you would share? Robert, thank you very much. What was your area? Let's listen and then analyze. Creativity. Creativity meaning your ability to think up new, interesting ways of doing things. You think perhaps that got snipped away somewhere in your past. Do you guys know Robert? Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, there you go. That's good. It's good to have friends that know you well, right? Let me ask the group this question. Do you believe that being innately creative is something, it's something we can all do, but do you believe some people are more naturally creative? Do you think that's something that someone can be talented in, and therefore someone can be less talented in? I agree with you. I think it is something that you can have a natural talent for or not. So with Robert, there's 2 bits of bad news I have for you on creativity. The first is you're not very creative. The second is your ability to get more creative is limited. Here's the stats. In an area, this is ratio of current development to potential development. So we're looking at Robert's creative potential. And we have 2 bits of bad news because this is a non-talent. Number 1, he's not very creative. Number 2 is he's about as creative as he can get. And I know that is counterintuitive and sounds sad. But the idea is since it's a non-talent, now go back to what you know about neural pruning. Why is it a non-talent? Because in Robert's brain, somewhere between birth and age 22, the neural networks for creativity were pruned back so that he could have some other talents that are awesome, right? But some have to be pruned back so that others can profit. And so if you're operating in an area of your NT, that stands for what do you think? Non-talent, you're about 85% developed already, which means you have an RFI, that stands for room for improvement, of about 15%. Now that's not bad, but it's not a lot. Would you do this with me? Hold your finger and thumb up like this. This is the universal sign for just a little bit. How much more creative could Robert get? Let's tell him. Just a little bit, right? Now 15% is not bad, but it's not a huge. In an area where Robert has a talent, in an area where he has not had neural pruning, he is 50% developed, which means he has 50% room for improvement. So we have more room for improvement in the areas where we have talents than we do, and that sounds backwards, doesn't it? A person who can't sing, you look at them and you say, wow, Mike has a lot of room for improvement. You know, I really don't. I can't sing, and I can sing about as well as I can sing, and I can do other things well, but my room for improvement in singing is limited. What if I practiced the rest of my life at singing? Cheryl, what do you think? It wouldn't help much. I could get a little bit better, couldn't I? How much better could I get? Just a little bit. And if you were to give me a percentage, what would that be? 15%. You've been taking notes. I appreciate it. So Robert, thank you. I need another volunteer to let us analyze your non-talent. Who else had something that you're just not naturally very, very good at? Oh, Bert, you were nominated. Yeah. Is it Victoria? All right. What was your non-talent?
Dancing. I didn't do it last night at all. I watched.
You didn't dance because you're pretty sure that you
2 left feet.
don't have a natural talent for it.
None.
All right. Let's work this through the analysis. Do you believe that dancing is something that some people can have a natural gift for? I mean, they don't practice, they're just good at it, right? Do you think it's true? So that means that their neural pathways did not get snipped, yours did, so that other great talents could materialize, but dancing not being one of them. So let's run it through our plan. Dancing is not a talent for Victoria, right? So we have 2 bits of bad news for her. Let's deliver it together. Number 1, right, all of us. Victoria, you're not very good at dancing. Second bit of bad news, you're almost as good as you'll ever be. Let's do it in unison. Ready? Number 1, Victoria, you're not very good at dancing. Number 2, you're almost as good as you'll ever be. But if you want to get a little better, you can. How much better? And that's what percentage? Now let's face it, 15% is not really bad. I mean, what if you gained or lost 15% of your body weight just like that? Would you notice? Yeah, so it's not huge, but it's not like it's nothing either. So you could get good enough to dance at the SAMS conference in Phoenix, because I've seen the competition and it's just not that high. I think you're going to be okay with a 15% improvement. I think you're going to be okay. Yeah, right. 2 more drinks and you're there. I'd like one more. Someone nominate someone at your table. We just want to run one more non-talent through the analysis. All right? How about over here? Someone have something over here? You're nominated?
I'm nominating Houston right there.
Houston? I picked on Houston all day yesterday. I'm not sure that's your... I'll tell you what, Houston, you can tell me who you want me to talk to. All right, Donna, thank you. What was did you have a non-talent?
I did. I took piano lessons because when I was little and I was not good.
So did you stick with it? You still play the piano?
No. When a year and a half later, when it was time for recital time and all I could play was "Oh McDonald Had a Farm" with one hand,
Right.
and didn't do it, my mother finally said, "I think you should quit."
Right. That's actually good parenting, I think, in a way, right? I mean, seriously. Think of all the things you've done with your life that you wouldn't have been able to do if you'd been taking piano lessons, right? How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Have talent. That's how you get to Carnegie Hall, right? Not practice. So let's run Donna through the analysis. Is playing the piano something that someone could be naturally talented in, yes or no? I think you're right, it is. So we have 2 bits of bad news for Donna. Let's deliver them in unison. Number 1, Donna, you're not very good at playing the piano. Second bit of bad news, Donna, you're almost as good as you're going to get. Little bit of good news, but if you insist, you can get a little bit better, and what percentage is that? 15%, which is not negligible. Thank you for agreeing to be a part of that. Excellent. Now, all of this is just, I hope, a fun way of pointing out a fundamental truth about how to spend our time as principals in the classroom. You're looking at a teacher's practice, and teachers, just like every one of us, have talents and non-talents in the classroom. You know, if you were sitting at your table and you're thinking, I just can't think of any non-talents. Here's a suggestion. Humility might be a non-talent for you, right? And so there's no such thing as a perfect lesson. There's no such thing as a teacher that has every talent on that card. Please, if you take this home and without going into any more depth and learning about these are not 23 things teachers should do. If a teacher tried to do all 23 of these things with the same class, they would need therapy afterwards, right? It's too many different things. You should pick several of these, and probably what we would say is you should, as a teacher, pick the themes here that are what? That are linked to your talents, that you're strong and that you're developed in. The role of an administrator, I believe, one of our roles is to be a talent scout. To be able to go into classrooms and to be able to say, you know what? I have been in your classroom several times, and every time I come in here, even though I've seen you teach different things, I always see you do this. This, I think, is a talent of yours. This is a strength of yours. And to give the teacher encouragement and feedback and coaching and skill and technique building based on that is one of the most powerful things we do as administrators. But the first thing we have to do is we have to believe that it makes more sense to give teachers feedback in the area of their talent than to always give them feedback in the area of their need. What's on the screen right now is simply the empirical argument for that. So why focus on talents and strengths and be positive and give encouragement to teachers? It's not just because we're nice. It's because we're busy. And because I want to aim at the 50, not the 15. I know that when I identify a talent in my staff, even though they're already good at this, there's 50% room for improvement that I can coach and develop and build in their technique. When I choose to work with a teacher in an area of his or her weakness, I can still be effective. But man, my target is less. It's 15%. And here's what else we know about building on a weakness. That 15% will come at a high cost. It will take longer. You'll have to be better. It'll take consistency. It'll take multiple years. It can happen. We can develop people in the area of their weaknesses, but it is longer, harder, for less payoff than developing them in the area of their strengths as well. So talent has a neural nature. That's the first part of our primer on talent. Let's see what else we have. All right, we've been talking about, let me go back to primer of talent, neural nature. Traces of talent. Let me just say 15 seconds on that. You can find your own talents by looking for their traces. Here are the traces of a natural human talent. Talents are traceable in your life by looking at these things. Number one, your top of the head responses. You always reveal your talent first because your talent is your prune neural pathway, and that's where your thinking happens fastest. So when someone catches you unaware and spontaneously says, what do you think about that? Your first response is from your talent because your talents are faster than the rest of your brain. So your reasoned think about it, analyze that response isn't a trace of your talent, but your top of the head response is. You get pulled over by a state trooper. Bang! He comes up to your window. Do you know how fast you were going? You are under the pressure. You've got maybe 5 words to swing a big ticket or not, and so you are under pressure. What's your top of the head response? If you have a talent for analysis and data, and you have a quantitative talent, it's just going to pop in your head. Officer? That would not be good. Oscar? I apologize, I just got new tires. I think my new tires are a different circumference than the old tires. I think it's thrown off my speedometer. If you'll give me a chance, I'll go get that calibrated right away. I don't know if that'll work or not, but man, that was a talented thing to say with the police officer in your window. Some people are more talented at drama, right? Your top of the head response is going to be, go ahead and give it to me. If you knew everything else that's happened today, you'd just know that this is a fitting end. And while I'm talking about the end, well, you'd be dramatic, right? And that would be your top of the head response. Keep track of how you respond. They point at your talents. Number 2, your talents are traced by your yearnings. What you yearn for is what you wish you were doing when you're not doing it. You know, I hate to say this, but I've always thought that when you're in a general session of a conference like this is a good chance to check your yearnings. So if you weren't here, what would you really like to be doing? Somebody going, I want to go shopping. Somebody go, I want to walk. Somebody say, I want to read. Some of you say, I want to write a letter. Some of you say, I want to go exercise. Whatever you yearn for when you're not doing it, that's going to be a talent because your brain likes the chemical signals that come from running electrochemical energy down those circuits. The next trace is called a satisfaction. Keep track of what satisfies you deeply. Here's how I like to think about this. At the end of the day, when you've done something and you're completely wiped out, you're completely tired, but you say to yourself, you know, this is not a scientific term, this is just a common term. Have you ever been good tired? Which means you're wiped out, but you say to yourself, you know what, I enjoyed what I did today, give me a little recovery and I'll do that again. You're probably using your talents at that time. So it's top of the head responses, it's yearnings, it's satisfactions. The fourth trace is called is rapid learning. Keep track of areas where you learn quickly. You always learn quickest in the area of your talents. Types of talent. Take your pen or pencil, just write these 3 down. There are 3 types of talent that we see in teachers' classrooms. Number 1 is called a latent talent, L-A-T-E-N-T, latent. That means that the teacher's talented in it and doesn't know it. Do you think that's possible? That a teacher could have a talent and he or she doesn't even know they have it? And when you discover it and show it to them, what a cool day that is. Because what we know is that when you find a latent talent of a teacher and show it to them, that's really all you have to do for a while. Just make them aware of it. You know, I don't know if you're aware of this, but you do this really, really well. All of a sudden, now they're focusing their attention on it, and they have great gains, and all you did was point it out. When you find a latent talent, make sure the teacher is aware of it. Second type of talent is called a conscious talent. These are the talents that the teachers know they have. The best way to approach a conscious talent is to build out the teacher's skill and technique and push them hard. You should push a teacher hard, I believe, in an area where you know they're talented. Don't take it, this would be cruel and unusual punishment for another teacher, but for you, because you're so good at this, I'm going to push you hard. Isn't that what a good coach would do with an athlete that has a specific talent? You'd push them. You'd raise the expectations on them. The third type of talent is called a strength. And a strength is a talent that the teacher knows about and that the teacher has already been pushed on, and the teacher has it honed and polished. It's not perfect. It'll never be perfect. But you know what it is? It's consistent. So the teacher has it at a consistent stage. The way to coach a strength is often to have the teacher share it with others. Have a focus group. Have a professional development session. Have them facilitate a session. Some sort of leadership. Types of talent. Themes of talent. Well, you have that on your card. 23 themes of teacher talent. Half of them on the front, half of them on the back. If you're interested in the themes of talent, stick around. We'll talk about some of those in detail in just a moment. Okay, good. Thanks for help running through that quickly. Let's talk just a moment about non-talent in teachers. So as administrators, we don't want to ignore non-talent. We have to do something. What did it say? Help teachers to manage around it. So I'm going to do a quick survey in a moment. I'm just going to ask you to just tell me which of these manage around the non-talent strategies you're the most comfortable with. Which one fits you best? So here are 5 ways to manage around something that you're not very good at. Number 1, get a little better. How much better can you get? This is a quiz. 15%. So claim your 15%. Right? That's a really great strategy. You come to me and you say, Mike, I've been watching you teach, and here's something that you're struggling with a little bit. Let me help you get a little better. And I'm not going to try to turn you into an expert. I just want to keep you out of trouble. That's the key. Help the teacher get good enough at their non-talents that it's not a big issue anymore. Don't try to turn their non-talents into their strengths. My third child, her name is Emily, and she has a non-talent in driving in reverse. She's a great driver in D. She's terrible in R. She's had 5 wrecks, and they've all been in reverse. She's the only person I know that has totaled 2 cars in our driveway without ever going out onto the street. She backed into her boyfriend or her sister's boyfriend's car and totaled it in reverse. Totaled his car and totaled her car. Now, neither car was worth very much, so it didn't take a lot to total them, but still, she has a non-talent. This is how I work with Emily. I say, dear, if you're going to keep driving, and I'm going to keep paying the insurance, you've got to claim your 15%. You've got to get a little bit better. I don't expect you to be a perfect backer-upper, but you've got to get a little better so that we stop having wrecks. I don't care if you become a consultant in backing up when you're a future. I just want you to stop hitting things. So here are 3 things that I'm coaching her. I'm giving her feedback. Tip number 1. Tell me if you don't think this is a good tip. I said, Emily, for you from now on, I don't care what time of day it is. I don't care what the weather is. When you go out to your car, you cannot open the car and get in. You must make 1 trip around your car before you get in the door. I want you to walk around the whole thing. And when you're around the back, look around and see what's back there, right? Just check it out, maybe. She would just get in the car and back up and not even look. No wonder she was running into things. So that's number 1. Number 2, this was the second strategy. Hope is not a strategy for backing up. You have to look, right? I know this sounds simple, but she's non-talented. She would get in the car and she would kind of check a mirror and then hope nothing was there. I said, you can't hope, you have to look. Strategy number 3. If you ever get in a situation where there's kind of iffy and there's a lot of cars behind you, ask for help. Go right back into your friend's house, ask her mother or father or somebody to, would you please back my car out to the road and I will take it from there. I know it'll be embarrassing, but we're talking about this is your license here. I'm just helping her get a little bit better. I was in a classroom. It was in Kentucky, but I'm not going to tell you where. And I have to say, it was the messiest classroom I've ever seen in my life. Have you seen that show called Extreme Hoarding or something like that? I think the teacher was an extreme hoarder. I mean, there was stuff everywhere. And so we were working with the principal and it's like, how can we give her some tips? How can we help her get a little bit better? So we were doing tip number one, get a little better. Here's what we said. Clear a path. Right? That's what we're going to get better, but right now, just from the middle of the room to the door, let's clear a path that students could get out in case of a fire. Now, I know that's not advanced, but we're just doing what? We're trying to get a little bit better. This is actually a pretty good strategy. Number two, get a partner. Someone who's good at what you're not good at. When I observe principals and give them feedback and shadow them, you know what some of the things that I've noticed about principals and assistant principals, and now I've noticed about principals and SAMs? It's great when you have a partner that doesn't have the same strengths that you do. Now, when you're working with your SAM, you might get along perfectly, but I'm saying the best SAM combinations are different. If the principal is ABC, the SAM is DEF, right? You've got two bases covered. If you're the big picture person, the SAM then is the detail person. If you're the detail person, it helps to have a SAM who's a big picture person. Get a partner who's not just like you, and the two of you together can cover up each other's weaknesses. Number three, make a support system. This is a very valid way of working with a teacher in an area of a non-talent. Basically, you're helping the teacher cheat. You're saying, you're not very good at this. Let me help you to make a support system so you seem better at it than you really are. As a high school chemistry teacher, I was weak at following the North Carolina standard course of study. I really was looking for a school that said, Mike, here's what we want you to do. As you're driving to school in the morning, whatever occurs to you, teach that today. Right? That would have been my perfect teaching environment. As you know, states have this thing called standards, and they sort of want us to teach toward them. That was one of my weaknesses. So as a teacher, I made myself a support system. I put a poster in the back of the room, and it was to me so that I could see it. It said, Mike, what is it today from the North Carolina Standard Course of Study that you want your students to know and be able to do? And just having it there kept me on track. Someone would ask a question, hey, Mr. Rutherford, I saw a commercial about this kind of soap. What's the chemistry of that? Oh, I'm glad you asked. Check me out later. Right now we're going back to, it just helped me. Was I any more focused? No, I just had a support system. That's all it was. I was in a parking lot the other day and I looked inside a car. There must have been 50 Post-it notes on the dashboard of the car. And you know what I thought to myself? Good for you, person. You're making a support system for yourself. You have absolutely no memory, but you're trying your best to cheat and to figure out what's on there. One of the Post-it notes said, buy more Post-it notes. It was ready to go. Number 4, overwhelm your non-talent with your talent. Make your non-talent less important. Make your non-talent less relevant because your talent takes over. I know several teachers who would come to me as a part of our coaching and say, you know, Mike, I really need some help with my classroom management. I'm just no good at this thing where you write their name on the board and then you put a check and then you send a note home and then on the second offense, I get confused, I mess up, I'm not consistent. I'm just not very good at that. And I remember the first teacher that said that to me. As I watched her teach, she had this incredible ability to build relationships with students. Her students would do anything for her. And I said, I don't want to get you in trouble, but if I were you, just use your great relationship building skills and don't worry so much about the classroom management rituals and routines. That's not your style. You can get your kids to behave by simply asking them to. Now, other people couldn't pull that off. Other people better have a really nice set of processes and procedures and token economies. But her relationship building skills were so strong, her principal and our message to her was, lean on that. And it makes your lack of consistency, it's still bad, but it doesn't hurt you as bad that way. Does that make sense? Take your non-talents and make them, it's interesting. Oh gosh, where's creativity? Robert said, I'm not very creative. I had a teacher say that once. She said to me, I said, what do you want to improve on? What do you think some of your weaknesses are? She said, I'm creativity. I'm just not very, all the other teachers at my grade level are so creative. I want to be more like them. They always have these interesting things to do. And I said, I've observed your classroom 5 times, and you always have interesting things to do. She goes, yeah, but I don't think them up like they do. I have to stay up late at night and prepare them and think about them. I can't do it off the top of my head. They do it off the top of their head. You know where I'm going with this, don't you? I said, look, your talent isn't creativity in the moment. Your talent is preparation. If you lean on your talent of preparation, at the moment of truth during the day, that looks exactly like creativity to me. That's overwhelm your non-talent with your talent. Number 5, this is called the Nike approach. Just don't do it. Just try to stop doing it and see if your classroom or school falls apart. You know, a teacher would say, I just can't do this. If it's not something that's required by law, say, well, skip it. Don't do it and let's see what happens. Often, here's what the teacher will say, but if I don't do it, it won't get done. And I try to gently say to them, well, right now, you're doing it. And you're no good at it. And so if it didn't get done, are we really dropping off a lot in performance there, right? In fact, it might even go up a little bit, so give it a try. Now, if someone misses it, then put it back, but at least try, just don't do it. Look at the people at your table, do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and just say, each person, the one of these non-talent strategies that makes the most sense to me is, one of these ought to sort of call your name more than the others. Share the one that you like the best. Take a minute, go. Thank you very much. Please hold on right there. Now, I know I didn't give you much time, but what I'm after is your what? Top of the head response, because that's your talent. Let's do a quick audio survey. I'm going to go through the 5. I'm going to say, get a little better, get a partner, make a support system. And when I get to the one that you thought was the most effective, I want you to give me a double clap. Just like that. How many times are you going to give me a double clap in the list of 5? 1 per person. And we'll just listen in and kind of see how the group feels about this. All right, here we go. The 5. Get a little better. Get a partner. Make a support system. Overwhelm non-talent with talent. Just don't do it. Oh, that was a little weak. I would like to do a quick study on the school districts that didn't clap for just don't do it. There's something to be said about that, but we don't have time to work on it right now. I'd like to leave you with this idea. I have an article on this up on the side of the stage if you'd like to pick it up on the way out. It's called How Talent Friendly is Your School? And I apologize, I would have put it on your table, but as I took them out of the box today, the computer went sideways and there's some parts of it missing, so it's not done perfectly, but it's still up here if you're interested. But I would like for you to write these 4 words down if I could ask you to do one more thing. Valued, appreciated, recognized, and developed. Talented teachers migrate over time to schools where they are valued, where they're appreciated, where they're recognized, and where they're developed. If the message of this morning, the logic model, life is busy, I have to do what's most important, teaching quality is most important, talent optimizes quality, coaching and feedback is how we develop talent, right? And over time that builds culture. If that resonated with you, then here's a good rubric for your school. How much do your teachers say that their talent is valued, appreciated, recognized, and developed? Valued means, do they feel like their teaching skills are what you value most about them? I'm going to say that there are some schools, not any represented here, where teachers believe that what the administrators value most about them is that they don't send anyone to the office. There are other schools that say what my administrator values most about me is my ability to teach and my talents. That's where you want to be. Number 2, appreciated. Appreciate means understands the fine details of. You want to be you want your faculty to say, my principal appreciates good teaching. That means they know what it looks like. They can spot it when they see it. Number 3, recognized. Some of you yesterday were in a session we did called 30-second feedback, which is just a quick way of recognizing teachers' talents. Talent will always accrue to where it's recognized. And maybe most importantly, number 4, talent will always go to where it can be developed, where it can increase. And talent is increased through coaching and feedback and by administrators who can spot and develop talent. May your school be ever more talent friendly. Thanks. Thanks for your good work. We got one. Thank you. What we're going to do, what I'd like to do this for this session is let's focus on the 23 themes. So this is a bit of an introduction to the artisan teacher, and what we'll do is talk a little bit about where these themes came from, talk a little bit about the research that produced them, talk a little bit about how they're organized, and then what I'd really like to do is to spend a little bit of time going into a couple of the themes kind of from the perspective of, okay, if I were observing a classroom, what does this one look like? So that I can really kind of up my observation skills and go with that. What I might do to get us started, though, is to simply say the 23 themes of the artisan teacher are built on this notion that it is more efficient and effective, and it is more optimizing of our time to spot and develop a teacher's talents rather than first and foremost think about a teacher's liabilities and weaknesses. I hope we're clear that that doesn't mean we ignore them. We certainly can't do that. That'd be malpractice. But to spend too much of our time working on people's 15% means we don't have as much time left to work on their 50%. And if we're after increased teaching quality, that could be a strategic error. How do you feel about that? Anything before we get into the nuts and bolts of the themes? Is there something that you'd like to add or ask? Does anybody want to say anything like, but gosh, that's wimpy, or that's not tough enough, or what about the derelicts, or anything like that? Did you want to say that? No, you don't say that. But I just wanted to, based on this morning's conversation about why that's an important concept, if there are just some things we could respond to that before we get started, that'd be great. What were you going to add? Thank you.
I was going to ask, and this is rare, but what if the teacher's non-talent is teaching?
You know, so I guess you heard that. So do you think it's possible that a person could go into the field of teaching and graduate and get a job and not have very many of the talents that are necessary to be a teacher? Let's admit that's possible, isn't it? People are attracted to education for a number of reasons. Some of them have to do with good vacations and benefits, and my mother was a teacher, and you know, so it's possible that that's true. I'd like to go on record as saying, I don't know that I've ever met a teacher that had no talents, but I've met several that their weaknesses greatly outnumbered their talents, and it probably would have been good guidance for them to have chosen another career, because it's going to be a real uphill slog for you even to be competent, much less awesome and great and produce student achievement. So I suppose the only response to that is, yeah, that's true, but as an administrator, let's not be quick to say, this teacher does not have enough talent to be at my school. Let's get good at spotting, and maybe we could say, if I could find a couple of things that I could build on, now I have a foothold, and perhaps we can help this person. I have to say, just as a person who works a lot with teachers and coaching them, there are many, many examples of teachers who are really struggling, who based on their talents worked their way out of it and became really, really, I'm not going to say they will ever be Teacher of the Year, but they became better than competent. They became people that you would say, you're a keeper. You know, I want you on my faculty. If I could sign you to a lifetime contract, I would. So it's our ability to spot talents. You know, the themes that are on that card, it's kind of interesting about spotting talents. It's hard to spot something that you don't know to exist, right? So the more of these themes you're familiar with, the more of them you can spot in the work of a teacher. So if you, for instance, looking at your card, if you were really understood chunking very well. Chunking is the talent of the teacher for being able to take something really complicated and break it down into small pieces so the students don't get overwhelmed. Some people have a real natural gift at that. Don't you think some teachers have the anti-talent to chunking? They take simple things and lump them together so they're so complex that nobody can understand where they're going. So, but if you knew that chunking existed, then it's easier to see it when you go into classrooms. So that's why part of being a great talent scout and developer as an administrator, I think, is doing our homework. Let's know what we're looking for. Let's know what these things are, because if we don't know they exist, it's hard to spot them. Anyone else have something you would add or ask just about the general approach of turning teacher talent into student achievement? Yeah, thanks.
So many of us in here are turnaround schools, and so
Yeah, thanks a lot.
many of us in here are turnaround schools, so we have a set time frame to get results.
Right.
So how do you work with not just the schools, but with the districts to help support and coach, to help
Yeah.
develop that talent? Because
Right.
we have the pressure of turning
Right.
things around fairly quickly.
Right.
So
Yeah.
do you work with districts around?
Yes, absolutely. And I know this is probably an unsatisfactory response, but working on talents is the fastest way to develop teachers, without a doubt. And it's a perfect match for people who are busy like school administrators. Here's what takes a long time: supervising teachers and helping them correct their weaknesses. That's a big time window. If you could discover that a teacher had a really good talent for performance feedback and develop that out, not only is that something that can be done in a period of weeks or months and not years, here's the other thing I like about working with teachers based on their talents. I don't have to be such a good coach. You know, basically all I have to do is call it to their attention and give them a few tools, and if it's a talent, they run with it. Now, if you're working with a teacher in an area where he or she is weak, you better have your coaching skills on, because you're going to have to say everything right, and it's going to have to be documented, and you're going to have to do all those things. So in a way, this is not only more positive, it's faster, right? And over time, in a turnaround school, the thing that's going to happen to turn things around is that TQ is going to go up. Teaching quality's got to go up. How fast can it go up? So by working with this, you get the talent of the folks that you have going up quickly, and then, like we said, the culture of your school becomes such that people start saying, I'd like to come and work for you. I've heard that talented people can go there and build their skills. And I know it's a tough place. I know you've got some challenges, but I'd like to be a part of that. You know, that'd be a cool thing to have, wouldn't it? Anything else? All right, let's go to work on, if you look at your card, let me just give you a little introduction to that. What you have there are 23 themes of teaching talent. I said this morning, here's where the 23 themes come from. Based on upwards of 35,000 classroom observations, just taking copious notes at what teachers do that are effective, these are the 23 most often seen recurring themes of effective instruction. These are not the only 23. These are not your favorite 23. They're just the 23 that recur most often. So if you were to go into a number of classrooms, what you see on that list, it has to have a cutoff somewhere. These are the things that you see the most often. They recur from classroom to classroom. There are some talents that teachers have that are unique. I've been in a few teachers' classrooms, and they do things that I don't see anyone else do, and that's their style, and that's what makes them work, and there's nothing on the card to help them. But what's on that card are things you could expect to see in just about any classroom that you went into. Now, here's how you get on the card. You have to qualify in 4 ways. Number 1, you have to be grade level neutral. So every theme on that card is kindergarten through 12. There are no early childhood themes. There are no secondary themes. These things have to be seen in the classrooms of young children, middle school, high school. Number 2, you have to be subject area neutral. There are no themes on there that are aimed only at literacy. There are no themes on there that are aimed only at science. They have to be useful for orchestra, PE, band, shop, English, civics, everything. Number 3, there has to be a research base in the literature behind everything that's on that card. So these can't just be things we saw in a teacher's classroom on a Tuesday afternoon, but there's no evidence in the literature that it exists anywhere else. So you'll notice as you read down those things, there's not a thing on either side of that card that you haven't already heard about or read about or seen research and literature on. So there has to be a research base behind it. And then maybe number 4 is the one that I'm the most committed to, is even though these are research-based, they don't come from research, they come from practice. So these have to be observed in the classrooms of already successful, talented teachers. They can't be theoretical. These aren't things that the research suggests a teacher should do. These have to be things that when you go into your best teachers, you look at this and you say, there it is, I see it, I see it, I see it, I see it. So they're observational. I don't know about you, but one of the things that I struggle with as a developer of teachers is that sometimes to get teachers to look at doing new things, it occurs to them that maybe what they're doing now isn't sufficient. So you kind of have to say, I'm doing something wrong to learn how to do something right. What most teachers resonate with on the list is we say, look, this is a list of things you're likely already doing. We want to bring it to your attention. We want to fill in the research base behind it. We've noticed you have knacks for this. Let's really look at what it is. Most people are pretty willing to give some work to developing out something they think they already have. Most people resist you adding something that you've suggested that is missing from their repertoire. So in a way, that can be one as well. I want to give you a little bit of structure to the 23. So look at the side of the card that starts with clear learning goals. All right, there's 2 sides. They're not numbered 1 and 2, but one of them starts with clear learning goals. There are 3 subsets of talent themes on this card. The first set is the first 6. And so the first 6, I would call, these are the fundamentals. They are the oldest. They are the ones that have been in the research the longest. So look at those first 6. Clear learning goals, congruency, diagnosis, task analysis, overt responses, mid-course corrections. These have been around with us since Horace Mann laid the first log in the first schoolhouse up in Massachusetts, right? And the reason these are so research-based is they've been around so long, there have been a lot of studies on them. So these are what we call fundamental talents. Do you believe that some teachers can be more talented than others on goal clarity? Have you seen that? Some people just think that way. They get to work in the morning and they say, here's my standard, here's my goal, and it just occurs to me, here's exactly what I'm going to do to help kids reach that goal. Other teachers are great teachers. They have wonderful activities, but they lose track of their goal orientation. Right? Doesn't mean that they can't be a great teacher. It just means the goal part isn't as natural a talent for them. So I like to say these first 6 are required whether you have a talent for them or not. So, that makes sense, doesn't it? You can't say, gosh, I went to this cool thing out in Phoenix and I learned that you ought to go with your talents, and I'm not very talented in standards-based instruction, so I'm just going to not go with that. I think no, you can't do that, right? You have to be good at these. That'd be like a surgeon saying, I'm really good at surgery except for I don't have a steady hand. I'm sorry, that's kind of a disqualifier for the rest of your talents. You better take some pills or something, because if you don't have a steady hand, you can't operate on people. That's a non-option. So these first 6, as an administrator, I would suggest that you consider these to be talents, but they're talents that if someone doesn't have them, they're still responsible for being able to be competent in these areas. They are the fundamentals. They are the 6 teacher skills over the years that are the most linked to student achievement. There's more data and more research on these 6 than anything else that we know of. So the first 6, we'll call those the fundamentals. Then, although they're not denoted any differently on your card, the next 12 form a group. The next 12, I like to think of these as optimizers. An optimizer is a talent that is not required. I would suggest that these next 12, so when I say the next 12, here's what I'm talking about. We're starting with conscious attention, chunking, connection, practice, personal relevance, locale memory, mental models, going to the backside, first-time learning, neural downshifting, enriched environments, success, and performance feedback. That's the next set. Those are talents and teaching abilities that I would suggest we approach teachers in this way. Find the 2 or 3 of these that you're the most adept at and lean on those. We would never expect a teacher to do all 12 of these in a lesson. It'd be too confusing. It'd be like too many spices in a dish. They'd cancel each other out. So unlike the fundamentals, the optimizers, we add 2 or 3 at a time depending on what your talents are, what your knack is for these things. Now that leaves, 5 more. And the last 5, I'll call those maximizers. They're the most optional. They really kind of come from the art of teaching. So now we're talking about the last 5, which are stagecraft, complementary elements, time and timing, personal presence, and delight. 6, 12, 5, non-options. Choose the ones that you're the most talented at. These are choice too. You know, we'd probably not call a teacher into their office and shut the door and say, we've got to have a really difficult conversation with you because in your career I just don't see enough stagecraft. You know, that would probably not be something we'd ever do. That would be a conversation, I don't see standards, I don't see goal clarity, but not stagecraft. If this is helpful, this is a metaphor that helps me understand how these 3 sets work together. Think of the first 6 as, let's use a home building metaphor. This is the foundation, and it is the framing and the roof of the house. So it's a solid foundation, it is the walls, and it is the roof of the house. Think of the 12 optimizers as the floor plan, how the rooms are arranged, how much space there is in the kitchen, how the kitchen connects to the living room, how much space is in the opening foyer. All of these things, they optimize what? The foundation of the house. You could live in a house that just had a foundation and the outside walls and a roof, right? Fundamentally, you could make it work. But the optimizers, that's where an architect goes in and says, oh, we're going to create this entrance, and then the traffic flow is going to go this way, and then we're going to have the sun come up in the morning into the bedrooms, we're going to have the sun set in the backyard over the garden. I mean, that's your floor plan. The 5 maximizers, that's your paint and your furniture, right? So those are the finishing touches you put on your house to make it not only solid and not only well designed, but to make it aesthetically beautiful. So this is your paint, this is your pictures, this is your interior design work, your drapes, your rugs, your color schemes. So do you see that as I work with teachers, you would never work with a teacher's paint color if they had needs in their structure or their floor plan, right? That's kind of how those 6 go. So as an administrator who's wanting to build the maximum amount of teaching quality in my school, I'm looking at these 6 a little differently. I'm looking at these 12 as my next line of optimization. And then, quite honestly, those last 5, that's not what helps a teacher become competent. I'd say that's not even what helps a teacher go from good to great. That's what we can help teachers who are already great go to the level of unforgettable or legendary. You know, and if you have a teacher who already has a solid foundation and already has a great floor plan in their little house of teaching, one of the most fun things to do as an administrator is help them redecorate. Help them add some of the maximizers to the list. Now, in artisan teacher, the reason we call it artisan teacher is because here's the definition that I like to use of an artisan. You know, an artisan, that's kind of a popular word these days. Artisan cheese, artisan bread, artisan jewelry. You know, artisan basically is the same thing you can get at the grocery store, although it costs more. So that's what it means, I think. I wish artisan wasn't used that way. I really like to go back to the original definition of artisan. An artisan is a skilled craftsperson. An artisan, you know, in the first definition of artisan, is a coppersmith, is a stonemason, is a carpenter, is a jewelry maker, is a baker, right? Is a cheese maker. There's probably a better word than cheese maker. What are cheese makers called? If bread makers are called bakers, what are cheese makers called? That's not a rhetorical question. What are they?
30 miles from us called the Monroe Cheesemakers.
The Monroe Cheesemakers. Well, then it's cheesemakers. By God, let's give some authority to that title now. Here we go. So as we look at the artisan class and how teachers are artisans, what we identify is that an artisan is part scientist, part artist, and part skilled laborer. So take an artisan pastry chef. They're a scientist. They understand the chemistry of pastry. They're also an artist. They know how to add certain things that make their pastries better than something you could buy mass-produced at the grocery store. But artisans aren't just theorists. They are workers. They've got flour on their apron. They've got the metalsmith has metal shards on their apron. That's the way I think great teachers are. They're scientists. They know brain research. They're artists. They add their style to their teaching. But you know, a great teacher comes early and stays late and produces a product, don't you think? I mean, we got learning going out the door. Sort of like, hey, I'm an artisan baker. I don't actually bake any bread. I just talk about it. No, you know, a teacher is a worker. There's a technical core to that. Now, let me just quickly say that those 3 things that are underlined up there correspond to these 6, and these 12, and these 5. The first 6, that's the work of teaching. The next 12, that's the science of teaching. And the next 5, that's the what? The art of teaching. So it's just another way of understanding how the 23 themes came to be. 23, I know that's a big number. I wish it was simpler. I wish I could stand up here today and say, we've done a bunch of research on this, and the good news is there's just 3 things great teachers do. The fact of the matter is, great teaching is complicated. It's sophisticated. It is not easy. Great teachers are not cut from the same mold. There is no template for it. There are great teachers who have A-type personalities and who have B-type personalities. There are great teachers who are hyper-focused, and there are some really awesome, completely ADD teachers, right? There's just not a template for it. I wish there were, if you wanted to study how teachers are ineffective, that would be a shorter study. There are only about 5 or 6 major ways teachers fail. One of them is they don't seem to appear to like to be around other human beings, right? That's sort of a non-starter for that. But if you want to study teaching excellence, you kind of do have to bring a lunch and stay for a while, because there are a number of things. So I wish it had come out to be a better number. 12 would have been good, or 10, or 7. That's a classic number. 23. Who thought that up?
Fromagères.
What's that?
Cheesemakers.
Say it again.
Fromagère.
Fromagère. Write that down. Optionally. Cheesemaker. Doesn't sound as good as cheesemaker, doesn't it? 23 is not unprecedented, though. There are some famous athletes who have worn the number 23. Anyone know of any? Michael Jordan from my home state of North Carolina was 23. Anyone here like Dr. Pepper? How many flavors are in Dr. Pepper? 23. That's right. There are 23 flavors in a Dr. Pepper. That's right. So just trying to give you some reason to latch on to this idea that there are 23 themes. Okay. What I'd like to ask you to do is take the card, and you're sitting at a table with a couple of other people, 1 or 2 or 3 others. And so what I'd like to do is you to just scan the card front and back based on the structure that we've just seen. And then just share, gosh, if I had to have the rest of the time that we had, if there was one of the themes that I'd really like to hear some more about, what would it be? I want you to share that with your table. We'll do a little multi-vote here in just a moment, and we'll see which of the themes we can use. I'd like to take the rest of our time and go into some of the individual themes and give you a feel for what they look like in the classroom. So, and I've got some that I'd like to share with you no matter what you ask for, but I'd like to have some of them that are kind of by request. So take 2 minutes, look at the card, share with the people at your table which ones you're most interested in. Okay, here we go. Let's do snaps this time. You know how to snap? So let's do double snaps, because if you just do single snaps, sometimes you miss, a thud. So double snaps. Try it. Let's try it together. Everyone's going to do a double snap. 1, 2, 3. Let's try it again in unison. 1, 2, 3. All right, good. So I'm going to go through the list. And when I get to the one you are the most interested in, I want you to give me a double snap, okay? And we're just going to listen in, and we'll kind of see how it goes. Here we go. Clear learning goals, congruency, task analysis, diagnosis, overt responses, mid-course corrections, conscious attention, chunking, connection, practice, personal relevance, locale memory, mental models, first-time learning, neural downshifting, enriched environments, success, performance feedback, stagecraft, complementary elements, time and timing, personal presence, delight. Okay, now some of you are waiting for other ones, for your choices, and then give me a snap. That's all the choices that you have, and being able to do that. All right, I've got a couple that's narrowed down to then. Let's see. Let's start with connection. All right, so you have your card. Some people can just listen and it makes sense and they don't need to take notes. I'm going to give you a couple of things to write down up here on the flip chart. So if you have a blank piece of paper and you want to jot a few things down, that might help, but it's optional, right? You know your own learning style. Connection is the talent of the teacher for taking what he or she wants to teach, and instead of teaching it directly, they teach it by connecting it back to a past learning or experience. So they say, how can I teach you by connecting this to what you already know, rather than how can I teach you? Piaget is the person in educational and curriculum development that gave us the term schema, right? A schema is a mental framework. It's several thousand to several million neurons that work together to construct a meaning around something. So we have schema. So here's how connection works. Connection is a powerful talent. Oh, this is a wonderful talent to have as a teacher. Connection works by optimizing this process called schema building. S-C-H-E-M-A, schema. There are two ways to teach. Number one, start a new schema. Number two, build onto an old schema. Number two is faster, better, deeper, and stronger. That's just basically how it works. Now, connection, and I'm giving you some information on some of the themes. This is optional. Don't feel compelled to write all this down. There are 4 of the 12 optimizers that are in the research that have a similar vein. They are the things that when teachers use these 4, 3 things happen. Speed, recall, and transfer. So speed is the acquisition speed of learning. Recall is, of course, the student's ability to remember what we've taught them. And by the way, recall means recall without review. Anyone can recall if the teacher takes enough time to review it. We're talking about recall without having to have a review sheet that you go through. And then the third is called transfer, which is the ability of the student to learn it in one setting and then use it in a new setting, which is really the purpose of education, right? Not just to do well on a test, but to be able to use it. So transfer is you learn it on Tuesday and you use it on Wednesday. Or you learn it in 3rd grade and you use it in 7th. Or you learn it in school, but you use it at home. So in school, you learn the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared in right triangles. And then you go to Home Depot to buy a ladder to clean out your gutters, and it dawns on you that the size of the ladder you need can be calculated without actually measuring it because it's the hypotenuse of the side of the wall and how far you want to bring it out from the base. And so that's going to Home Depot and using your education. That's transfer. And the reason that you want to be able to do that is they price ladders by the what? By the foot. The longer the ladder, the more you have to pay. So you don't want a longer ladder than you need. That's what we mean by transfer. Now I know I'm talking fast, I know it's a lot of numbers. There are 4 of the 12 that do these 3. Was that confusing enough? Here they are, in case you want to know. Connection, locale memory, personal relevance, and mental models. Connection, locale memory, personal relevance, and mental models. Those 4 optimizers have something in common. They increase these 3 things. They all increase the speed of learning, the recall without review, and the transferability. And that's a pretty good triple threat. So these are high-performing talents that you chose. By the way, the other ones that I heard a lot of snaps on was locale memory, which is another one of those 4, right? So connection is schema building. If I were going to draw a picture of connection, this would be the picture I would draw. I would draw a little memory cloud. In the middle of it, I'd put PLE. That stands for, what do you think? Past, learning, and experience. And then I would put a C up here. This stands for content or curriculum. So connection is the ability of the teacher to take the content and to connect it to a PLE, to build on something that's already there. And when the teacher does that, you're adding on to a pre-existing schema rather than building a new schema. That does speed, recall, and transfer. By the way, neuroscientists tell us that the reason that happens is that whenever a new schema is built, the first few 100,000 neurons that connect to build a brand new schema connects slowly and with greater energy than subsequent neurons that connect in. So the first few thousand neurons are slow and painful to put together. But after you have a few 100,000 neurons, the next few thousand that jump on do so quickly at a low energy level. And so that's why it increases speed, recall, and transfer to build on something that students already know. So in the Karate Kid movie, Mr. Miyagi had Daniel-san go out the night before and wax his car, right? Wax on, wax off, so that the next day he could build on that schema and teach him 2 martial arts moves on how to block incoming kicks from your right and from your left, right, that deflect it that way. And Daniel-san said, Mr. Miyagi, I came here to learn martial arts. You've got me waxing your car. He was a pretty good teacher, though, wasn't he? Because he was setting up a connection. He said, we're going to get to the martial arts part. Right now, I'm building a schema in your brain, and I'm going to connect back to it the next day. That's how connection works. I was watching a elementary school teacher teaching subtraction and regrouping, and the students came in for their lesson, and in the middle of every cooperative learning table were 4 green felt hats with little feathers on them. And before they started the lesson, she turned on the smartboard and showed them about a 3 or 4 minute video clip of Robin Hood and his merry men, you know, and Maid Marian, and who was the bad guy? The Sheriff of Nottingham, right? Remember the story? Robin Hood? Now, why was she showing them Robin Hood, and why were they wearing green hats? Because Robin Hood did what? Stole from the rich to the poor, which is what subtraction with regrouping is, right? It's stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. And so when she started teaching them regrouping, she said, this is Robin Hood, right? And they put their hats on and they did it. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, you had to go to Walmart last night. You had to buy all this felt, make these hats, get this feather. You're already 7 minutes behind the classroom down the road because all they did was start with a worksheet on how to subtract with regrouping. But it's a tortoise and hare story, isn't it? Because eventually the first teacher is going to catch up to and pass the second teacher because now kids are learning by building onto pre-existing schemas that they already have. That's how connection works. The 7th grade social studies teacher was teaching 3 branches of the federal government. executive, judicial, and legislative. Instead of just teaching them straight away, had the students participate in a little tournament of paper, rock, scissors first. He connected the three branches of the federal government to paper, rock, scissors, right? He said the legislative branch is paper. It passes bills. The judicial branch is scissors. It can declare things unconstitutional. The executive branch is the rock, right? Think of a paperweight on the president's desk, the rock. And he really showed how paper, rock, scissors are a perfect balance of power because what? Paper beats rock, scissors beats paper, but rock beats scissors. It kind of makes you think what the founding fathers may have been doing up in Philadelphia when they were setting up the federal government, right? I asked the teacher, this was a teacher in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I asked him, I said, that's a novel way of doing that. I've never seen that before. I said, tell me, does it help? Can they remember it better that way? And he said, you know, Mike, I really think they can. What I notice is, like later on this year when I bring this back up and we build on it and go deeper, they're able to just bring it right back because they remember the paper, rock, scissors. What was he doing? Taking the content he wanted to teach, and instead of just teaching them directly. Now, don't you remember learning this? How did you learn the three branches of the federal government? I learned it on a worksheet. I think it was matching or flashcards or something like that. Now, I remember back in the day, some of you are similar in age to me, but I think it was a simpler time when worksheets had a good smell to them. Anyone remember that time? Right? That's right. That's spirit duplicators. There are teachers today that have no idea what this is. I think we all got along better back in those days, to be honest with you. I think because we were all half high on inhalants the whole time. Teacher had a bad attitude, just put them in the spirit duplicating room for a few minutes and everything was good after that. Do you remember being a kid in school? And this will tell your age a little bit, but there's nothing better than getting one and it's still a little moist. Yes. And you smell it and you get going. Yes. Things didn't get any better than that. That's right. Now, I'm thinking, so you can teach this on a worksheet, build a new schema, or you can teach it by connecting back to a pre-existing schema. Connection is the talent of the teacher for making this, for connecting back and doing it in that way. I was watching an orchestra teacher once, and she was teaching students how to use the whole bow. The violin and the cello, because they were kind of just sawing in the middle. She goes, no, you got to use the whole bow back and forth, and you got to feel it go all the way to the edge. She goes, have you ever been to the edge of like up on the Blue Ridge Parkway? This was up in the mountains of North Carolina. And you kind of look out over and you get that kind of feeling like you're about to fall off. She goes, I want you to get that feeling. When you pull the bow across, I want it to feel like you're right on the edge of a precipice. And you know what? It worked. It was back and forth, and it worked. And they started playing with more, she called it more amplitude, I think. And it did sound a lot better. Then she got on the violins and the cellos for playing at the same time. She said, look, she goes, this piece of music requires the violins to be quiet so that the cellos can jump in and you're playing on top of each other. And she said, and of course, this was again in North Carolina, we're a southern state. She says, in the South, you're taught to be polite and you don't interrupt people, right? Don't you remember your mother telling when someone's talking, you wait your turn. So be polite and don't play while the other person's playing. And you know what? They fixed it. She was what? Connecting to a schema. Polite conversation is where you don't interrupt the person before they're finished talking. It sort of helped them in their playing. It was just a teacher using this natural thing called connection. I was taking a golf lesson once, and the guy was teaching me the stance. You would think that it wouldn't be hard to learn the stance of a golf swing, but evidently it's very complicated because he was teaching me how to put my feet. He said, put your foot here. Rotate your toe out 10 degrees. Other foot here, 10 degrees. Bend your knees, not that much. Chin up, shoulders back, arms in front. Bend at the waist. Head up, chin. It was not working. I was thinking, man, I must be worse at golf than I think because I can't even stand. Right? I don't even have the stance right. He scratched his chin for a moment. He said, he thought of a better way. He said, Mike, he goes, you got 4 kids, right? I said, yep. He goes, I bet you buy a lot of groceries. I said, we sure do. He said, have you ever done this? Have you ever gone to the grocery store and you have 2 bags of groceries in your hands, nothing left to shut the car door with but your backside? I said, yeah, I've done that. He goes, show me what that move would look like. I said, really? He goes, yeah. He goes, grab the groceries. I got them. He goes, now shut your car door. I went, boom. He said, put down the groceries, pick up the golf club. That's the stance, right? It's like that. What did he do? He was using connection. And you know, when he did that, I thought to myself, gosh, thanks. Now I can use that. I can go out on the golf course. Nobody needs to know what I'm thinking, right? I pull out my club. I'm going, boom, down, you know. I'm ready to go. It takes so much more time to teach a new schema. That's how he started. He said, feet shoulder width apart, toes out 10 degrees. I mean, he was teaching me from neuron 1, connecting to neuron 2, connecting to neuron 3, and you can learn that way. But it's just so much faster if you can find something to connect back to. So one of the talents that we look for in the classroom is whenever we see the teacher saying, it's just like this. If you want to understand how this works, think about how that works. That's called connection. That's schema building. It's an awesome talent to have. Do you think some teachers can be more talented in that skill than others? Some people are just great example providers, aren't they? In our feedback workshop yesterday, we talked about a 9th grade physical science teacher who a student raised her hand and said, solids, liquids, and gases. I just don't understand liquids. I understand solids, and I understand how gases work, but I don't understand liquids. And the teacher looked up at the clock and said, in 8 minutes, we're going to have a class change. You're going to go out in the hallway, and when you're in the hallway during a busy class change, that's a lot like a liquid. Because you're a molecule, you have other molecules right next to you, you're tightly packed. You're not in one specific place, you're going with the flow. But you have to stay inside the hallway, take the shape of the container. That's what a liquid does. So he said, now right now you're sitting in your assigned seat. That's like a solid. If you were to come back and see me after school today and there's no one at the school, you could walk however way you wanted to and get back here. That'd be kind of like a gas. But a class change, that's like a liquid. And you know what? I thought to myself, nice connection. Because everyone can connect to what it's like to be in a busy class change. And I'm thinking that student, that girl that asked the question, she learned how molecules behave in a liquid quickly. She'll be able to recall it without reviewing her notes, and it'll transfer to when she takes chemistry in high school or some other advanced class. That's one of the products of connection. Your turn. With the 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 people at your table, just take a minute or two, and let me just ask you to say, based on the definition, I've given you a few examples, give me some back. Now you're going to say, okay, I was in a classroom not too long ago, and I saw this, and I'm thinking that was a connection. I was in another classroom and I saw the teacher do this, and now I'm thinking that was a connection. See if you can come up with some real life examples. Of course, I just want your top of the head responses. I'm going to give you about 90 seconds. See what you can come up with. Go. Thank you very much. Let me ask you to hold on right there, and let's just share a couple of quick examples. So we're talent scouts. We're observing teachers' work. We're looking at their moves, and we're looking for examples of connection. Here's one. Let's go.
When I teach
students to observe the retard, the gradual slowing down. I just tell them, you are the train pulling into the station. You have many cars connected to each other under the direction of the conductor. If you don't slow down all at the same time, the cars crash and they go away. So, as we're going along, the conductor says we are all slowing down together.
Great.
And now for every song that we do, there's a retard. All I have to say train. I don't have to explain anything more than that. Less song we're doing.
Train is the PLE. Retard is the new curriculum. When you connect one to the other, here's what you get. They learn it faster, they recall it easier, like you said, and it transfers. You know, if you didn't get these three things in return, this wouldn't be a very good investment in time because it takes more time to teach to a connection, doesn't it? But you would say as the teacher, you get the payoff, don't you? When you come up with a good connection.
And then I'm able to then use it when we get to an accelerando, which is a gradual increase of speed together. So it's the same thing. Train's pulling out of the station, and here we go.
Right. Plus that sounds more positive, accelerando, rather than the other word that he used, right? You get in trouble for that. Yeah, good. Good example. That's awesome. That's a talent scout. That's spotting it. We need another. What's another example of connection? Nominate someone at your table that had one that you came up with. Oh, gosh, you must have had an awesome one. Go ahead and tell us what it was.
It was, I was our kindergarten teacher who was doing a phonics lesson.
Yeah.
And she had the children equate the vowels using the middle sound.
Right.
So the elbow would begin with the vowel. They would cat out, if it was cat, and they would blend the letter with the vowel. Was always the elbow.
Good. It's the one in the middle, right? Yeah. So it's right there? Yeah. And so here's something that you already know. You know about your arm, right? And now I'm going to take sounding out multiple syllabic words, the consonant, the vowel, the inconsonant. I'm going to connect it to what you already know. In doing it that way, do you think you saw some of the three? Speed, recall, transfer?
Yeah, I was saying, when they finish doing that, we have a team that comes back in and do a business assessment with the children. And the children were in the business assessment now with their regular teacher, with an outside person, and they're doing all of that.
Yeah.
So for that recall.
That's a good sign, yeah. Students are taking a quiz or doing something, you see them doing what you ask them to do. You know, like a guest conductor comes in and they're all going, train wreck, train wreck. What are you talking about? You know, you're the only one that would know. Now, before we move on from connection, I do want to just quickly say, and it would be malpractice if I didn't point this out, teachers who are really talented at this can sometimes be risky. Because do you see that when a student, in a student's mind, they're connecting the curriculum to a past learning or experience, if they make the wrong connection, they can have a misconception, right? And since this is an invisible process, right? I learned that from yesterday's session. There are visible and invisible processes. This is an invisible process, and so you never really know. What if a student had been aboard a train that derailed? You know, then the analogy would maybe cause them to think of something else, right? Rather than what we're looking at. So just remember that when a teacher uses connection, be careful and test your connection to make sure that it connected to the right thing. 5th grade class, teacher came in on Tuesday, reviewed quickly from Monday and said, yesterday we worked on parallel lines. Who can tell me the definition of parallel lines so that we can build on that and go further in our geometry unit today? A little girl in the back row raised her hand very tentatively, very sheepishly, and she said, Mary, what's the definition of parallel lines? And Mary said, according to what I wrote down yesterday, parallel lines are two lines that do not have sex. Now, what do you think the teacher probably said on Monday that the student misinterpreted? Two lines that don't what? Intersect, right? So, do you see that in the student's brain, intersect and have sex is right next to each other? You have to really be careful about connections, or you could have a misconception that could last. I mean, that's going to make a very good, what'd you learn in school today, honey, Mary? Yeah, that's going to get a phone call to the SAM. That's what's going to happen to that, right? When we do that. So, connection. Good work. Let's look at locale memory. This is another one that got some snaps from you, and it's very similar. It's just a couple of notches down, and it fits into the same category of connection. Locale memory is an optimizer, which means that it's not required. We would never say to a teacher, you're not using locale memory every day. We would never say to a teacher, you're not using connection every day. You know, we could say to a teacher, you're not using clear learning goals every day, right? That's a fundamental. But these are optimizers. They're optional. Let's see. Locale memory is teaching to the brain's three-dimensional spatial memory system. It produces the same results as connection: speed, recall, and transfer. In some ways, it's similar to connection. Think of it this way. We're looking at, it's called locale memory. You see this all the time in your classrooms. This is an awesome talent to spot and develop. It's fun to do. It's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. So again, if you're taking notes, draw yourself a little memory cloud and understand that memory in the human brain is redundant. The brain remembers things in different memory systems because memory is important, and so the brain does it in several ways so that you don't forget. It's kind of like an airplane has redundant systems for lowering the landing gear. If one doesn't work, there's another way. If that doesn't work, there's a third way, because landing the plane is pretty important. You want to have redundant systems. Well, for your body to survive in the environment, your ability to remember the past and make decisions about the future is really important. So it makes sense that there are redundant memory systems. There are actually, neuroscientists tell us, about 5 redundant memory systems in the human brain. The 2 that we know the most about are called taxon memory and locale memory. Taxon memory is when the human brain remembers things by category. The root taxon is taxonomy, or list, or category. So when you remember things in your taxon memory, you sort of pull out a file cabinet in your brain and you put things and you keep them separate into the separate files. Important bank numbers, like my PIN number, go right here. Birthdays of my family, anniversary, that goes under important dates. Civil War facts maybe go here. All those things those are all categories. So there's nothing wrong with teaching to locale or to taxon memory, but there is another very powerful memory system that operates redundantly, and that's called locale memory. And locale memory is when the brain remembers not by category, but by position, by three-dimensional space. Where was your body when you encountered this information? Not what part of my brain am I going to file it. Where were you? It's spatial memory. That's not special memory with a North Carolina accent. Spatial memory. That's spatial as in three-dimensional positions in space. So it's when teachers take what they want to teach and instead of connecting it to a category, they connect it to a place. The example that you gave was actually also, besides being a connection, that was a good example of locale memory, wasn't it? Because the students are sounding out the consonant and vowel sounds by putting them in a location on your body. This is locale memory, figuring out how many days are in a month. Remember, January, February, March, April, May. You've got the information on your body. It's in a three-dimensional position in space. That's locale memory. Let me give you a couple quick examples of locale memory. Let's see. I was watching a teacher teach population density. It was a high school civics class. And the teacher took his class out onto the bus parking lot, which was marked off with lines, and they used the lines on the bus parking lot to simulate population density. So for a very dense population, like say Beijing, they put all the students in one what would you call that? Space. Good. Space. Doesn't have to be spatial space. That's right. And so they were all crowded together and said, let's let this represent population density of Beijing. Then they said, now here's the population density of, say, Bloomington, Indiana. Just a nice middle-sized town. In that case, there were like 5 students per space. Now here's the population density of the state of Wyoming, which there are only 55,000 students that go to school in the whole state of Wyoming. And so every student got 3 bus spaces to themselves. And I thought to myself, even though that's extra time and effort, they're not going to forget that. They're learning that in their spatial locale memory. They're not just putting it into a category called, what? Population density. So it ups the speed, it ups the recall, and it ups the ups the transfer. Is anyone here in the marching band when you're in high school? Any marching banders? Bandies? You know, people who watch a good marching band at the halftime show of a ball game say, wow, isn't that amazing that they can play and move at the same time? Here's what they don't understand. Your playing and your moving are connected, aren't they? And it's what keeps you together. When you cross the 35-yard line, that's when everyone hits that note at the same time. If you were to stand and try to play it, it might not sound the same, or isn't that right, music? So your locale memory is how you're remembering that. Anyone here ever had any experience in theater? Been in any plays, acted a little bit? Well, then you know that your position on the stage is how you remember your lines, right? There are 9 parts to a theater stage. Center, left, and right. Up stage, down stage, center stage, right? And so if you're not in the right place, if you can't make it to this big rock with this palm tree, you cannot remember the words, I'm going to wash that man right out of my hair, right? In South Pacific, because the words are connected to the place, and if you don't get to the place, you can't remember the words. Here's what we know about locale memory. Locale memory is powerful. You can remember more information in your locale memory than you can in your taxon memory. You can remember the whole song to South Pacific. You couldn't remember that just in a category of your brain, right? Locale memory can be very simple. I saw a teacher once doing greater than and less than, and she was teaching in a classroom that was very, very overcrowded. I don't even think this classroom was meant to be a classroom, but it was being used as one. There were maybe 30 students in there, and all she had them do was lean. She'd put 2 numbers up on the screen. She'd say, if the one on the right is greater than the one on the left, I want you to lean to the right, all right? Now lean to the left. And they were just adding a little bit of locale memory just by leaning one way or the other. Taking notes is locale memory. It's not a lot. Here's a way to think about locale memory. The bigger the muscle groups involved, the more it's locale and the less it's taxon. So if you were to take notes on a Post-it note, tiny little Post-it note, just write down a few key words, you'd be using the smallest muscles in your body, right? Just the tiny little finger muscles. If you used an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, you've now got to make some decisions about where on the page you put that, right? That adds a little bit of locale memory. If the teacher gives you a big piece of paper, you have to use a little bit bigger muscle group. Or maybe puts paper up on the wall where you have to go over and do things collaboratively with a big sheet of paper. The bigger the paper, the more locale memory. Anyone here ever lost your car keys? All right, what's the time-honored way to find your car keys? Retrace your steps. Retracing your steps is a locale memory strategy, right? And the reason you don't remember where your car keys are is because your taxon memory has failed you. Right? There's a category in your brain called where did I leave my car keys? And you looked in there and nothing was there. And so then you said, well, let me use my redundant memory system. Now here's why I'm using this as an example. Tell me if I'm wrong. Almost always, you do not retrace your steps to your car keys. You retrace your steps to a locale that contains the memory of where your car keys are. So you're in the kitchen and you say, I've lost my car keys. And you walk in the dining room and you say, I've still lost my car keys. And you finally get to a place. You think you're following your way back to some other place. But what happens is you get to the back porch and you go, I left my car keys on my bedside table. And you go back and that's where they are. Different locations. What? They contain different memories. Don't look at me like that. Am I the only person who's ever been in the kitchen, walked into the pantry, and forgot why I came in here, right? Because I've changed locations. And I know how I can remember, but I say to myself, I'm not going to walk back into the kitchen just so I can remember why I walked into the pantry. That's an insult to my intelligence. So I sit there and go, what was it? What was it? What was it? And I can't think. And so then I walk back in, voila, there it is. And then I walk. Has that ever happened to you? That's your locale memory being strong and your taxon memory being weak. Teachers who have a talent for locale memory know if I can embed it in 3-dimensional space, my students are going to learn it faster, remember it, transfer it better. I've seen chemistry teachers get students up and out of their seats and do chemical bonding, right? So it's double replacement, single replacement. Also using connection. I saw a chemistry teacher once do a prom drama where a couple went to the prom, had a fight, dissolved their relationship, The girl found another boy who was slightly more electronegative than the first and bonded strongly with him. There were two then free radicals left over that spotted each other across the room, and they bonded, and so what we had was a double replacement reaction with no precipitant. Which means, Mom, the girl I brought home isn't the one I took to the prom, but I like her better, right? That's what happens in double replacement. The kids remembered it, of course, because they were up and out of their seats. They also remembered it because it was a connection to something that was in their brain. It's a connection to prom. All right, we only have just a couple of minutes left, so I want you to do one more round of brainstorming. Give me back some examples. You've been in classrooms. You're giving feedback to teachers. Now you've got another term. Okay, now I see that was locale memory he was using. That was locale memory. See what you can come up with. 90 seconds. Go.
That are popular in math and in other places. Would that be related to this?
Yeah, it's a little bit of locale memory. And the bigger the manipulatives, the better the locale memory. So moving stuff around a little bit is good. Moving it bigger places is better for memory. Getting up out of your seat and standing and saying, you stand in the tens column, you stand in the hundreds column is even better than just moving them from place to place on the page. Thank you very much. Let me ask you to hold on right there and share a couple of examples. Locale memory. It's a powerful talent to have. You know, often I'll sit in the back of a classroom and I'll see a teacher use this and I'll say, I don't know what's going on. And it's amazing how the students now remember it and can transfer it without reviewing it. And I'm thinking to myself, how did you think that up? Some people have a talent for thinking locale, right? Maybe they have a bodily kinesthetic intelligence. I don't know, but they just seem to be able to think these things up better. How about a couple of quick examples of where you've seen locale memory? Cheryl, you've been a good contributor today.
Years ago.
Hold on. My bad.
I'm sure I was in
Elementary school, the teacher came up teaching us the Great Lakes. She told us to use homes. And I tell you, I could do that today. This was 45, 50 years ago. I can still do it. H-O-M-E-S, Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, Superior. That's the only way I know it.
That's right, yeah. Actually, HOMES is, in all acronyms, they are locale memory if there's a position there. If not, they're a connection, right? And connection and locale memory are very important. You're connecting the 5 Great Lakes to something that you already know. They're locale if the HOMES is in 3-dimensional space. So like if it's H-O-M-E-S, if you're just doing it in your brain, it's taxon, but it's what? I'll go back. That's a good example of connection, right? Connection and locale memory are very, everyone in here knows all the ingredients to a Big Mac sandwich, don't you? 2 all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun. Because it's connected to something that was already in your brain. It's a schema builder. What's another example of locale memory? It's 3-dimensional space. Thanks a lot. Here's one. You get the next one, Patricia.
I had a fifth
about how they were married and they've been married for years and years. And for Mom, she wrote multiplication and an area, and then perimeter and add. And then she had holes around the card, and she gave them a pink piece of yarn.
Yeah.
And they had to lace around the outside. And she said, why? She said, because, and they all said, because the perimeter is around the outside. Then they flipped their card over and drew a big head and a circle, which reminds them of the area.
Yeah.
And then they drew hair as much, she gave 15 seconds to draw as much crazy hair as they could, because then they had a connection of hairy area. And
Hairy area.
and so they had that card as their note card to put in their notebook to remind them.
Awesome. Good example of locale memory and of connection as well. Here's another example. Thank you.
Anyone who's taking the quantum learning,
Yeah.
several years
A lot of
ago,
good examples.
They remembered an example that they used to use was standing in a position on the clock and teaching something in sequence.
Right.
So I took it 10 years ago, and I still remember, and they taught us the first 12 presidents of the United States just by adding colors and positions and just different words to describe the presidents. And
Right.
so that was 10 years
Yeah.
ago, I still remember.
You still remember it. That's the power of locale memory. I don't know if you've ever read the book Moonwalking with Einstein. It's kind of a new popular book. It's about the memory championships. There's an international and U.S. memory championship. So a journalist went inside to figure out how do these people remember. Like they'll give you a deck of cards in 2 minutes, and you have to remember the sequence of the whole thing. And they can do it. And the way they do it is locale memory. The number one structure that all memory gurus use is called memory palace, which is you have a big house, palace with lots of rooms, and you just walk from room to room and you put things in each room of the house. And then even though it sounds like you could never remember it, when you go back to the room, there it is. It's there waiting for you. Just shows you how powerful locale memory is. Now we have 23 themes. I hope that as we work through them today, you got a little appreciation of how they fit together. We had time to look at 2 of the themes a little bit more in depth. What I'd share with you before we adjourn for the day is whether it's, can I hold up your card? Whether it's this lexicon or whether it's another one, here's what's important. That teachers and administrators have a common language to talk about teaching. Common language speeds up collaboration. Common language accelerates learning. Attorneys speak to each other in attorney speak, and that helps them to communicate. Engineers talk to each other like engineers. Teachers and administrators should talk to one another like educators. So when you say that was a great example in your classroom, Cheryl, of locale memory, wouldn't it be great if the teacher knew locale memory is teaching to the brain's 3-dimensional position memory, there's taxon, there's locale. When we share those understandings, it accelerates our ability to give feedback and our ability to work with one another and to build on the talents that are there. If you'd like any more information on all of that, I put up here, and it's on the bottom of your memory jogger and other things, our website. The website has a whole lot of free things to download. Most of the things I gave you today are there. I think the article that was misprinted is there as a PDF file too. Just look over. It's rutherfordlg.com. LG stands for Learning Group, not large. If you have a Facebook account and you want to like Rutherford Learning Group, you'll get a periodic update when we publish something else, put up a new tip. What I try to do is go around from district to district, and when I see some really excellent teaching, write it down and share it with other people as well. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, you might want to go and check the like button there. Hey, it's been fun. Thank you for sticking around and working today. Have a wonderful rest of the conference. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Good work.